So today we'll do Damodar Katha. Katha extracted from Bhagavad Mahapuran, and it's mentioned in other Puranas as well. In the Padma Purana is also mentioned. But there's also a few different, there's the Damodar Ashtakam. We've chanted that in the beginning of the Kartik Maas. There's also the Damodar Stuti, which is probably the more popular one. So I'd like to ask you for us to group our voices together before we look at a few verses from the 10th canto of Bhagavad Mahapuran. The Katha is a huge one, but we've narrowed it down to 4 or 5 verses. But before we do so, if you can focus the mind and join the mind and the mouth in the glorification of Damodar Bhagavan. Damodar means Krishna when he was little. So let's chant a few prayers to that form of Krishna, Damodar, and then we shall look briefly into the Katha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kararavindena Padaravindam Mukharavinde Biniveshayantam Batasya Patrasya Puteshayanam Balam Mukundam Manasa Smarami. So this is a very long stuti. We'll chant 4 or 5 verses. But when we do so, let us Bala Mukundam. Bal means little, the little Krishna. Kanhaya was about 2 years old when he did this Leela. So let's focus the mind on little Krishna as we group our voices together. Shri Krishna Govinda Hare Murari He Nath Narayan Vasudeva Jihve Pivasva Mritameta Deva Govinda Damodar Madhameti Govinda Damodar Madhameti Vikretu Kama Kil Gopakanya Murari Padarpita Cheta Vritti Dadhyadikam Mo Avashad Vochar Govinda Damodar Madhameti Govinda Damodar Madhameti Grihe Grihe Gop Grihe Grihe Gopavadhut Dhamma Sarve Militva Samavapya Yogam Punyani Namani Patanti Nityam Govinda Damodar Madhameti Govinda Damodar Madhameti Sukham Shayana Nilaye Nijepi Namani Vishnu Pravadamti Martya Te Nishitam Tan लतां व्रजन्ते गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति जिह्वे सदैवं भज सुन्दराणि नामानि कृष्णस्य मनोहराणि समस्तभक्तातिनिवासनानि गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति समस्तभक्तातिविनाशनानि गोविन्द दामोदर माधवेति 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 दामोदर भगवान की जय। Devotees of Bhagavan, like we said initially, that we'll be looking briefly today at the Damodar Katha. Like I said, that this Katha is taken from Bhagavad Mahapurana. I do hope that most of you who were with us last week, that you are able to remember the Katha from last week. We talked about the importance of Tulsi, how Tulsi, the life of Tulsi, how Tulsi started from a divine being into the being of Madhavi as mother, and then went on to become Brinda or Tulsi, and how a divine being that came from Golok Dham, a Sudama by the name of Sankachura, when he was destroyed by Bhagavan Shankar by the Trishul and those bones were thrown into the river, those bones of Sankachura actually became the shank that we use. We discussed how the body of Tulsi became the Gandaki river, and the hair of Tulsi became the Tulsi plant, and has taken over the entire place where Krishna operated as a human being when he came in the form of a human being. And that Tulsi becoming of essentially a forest has constituted the name Vrindavan. Ban meaning forest. So when you go to Vrindavan, it's a forest of Tulsis. At least that's how it used to be. Now there are more buildings and Tulsi plants, but that's how it's called, Vrindavan. We discussed how Bhagavan became the Shaligram from the curse of Tulsi, and how Bhagavan has assumed the form of the Annapurna mountain. And from that mountain, these Shaligrams, after they were being cut by these insects that are there, and the Sudarshan chakras form on them, then they'll roll into the Gandaki river. Because now they represent Bhagavan Vishnu, represented by that mark that's on it, the Sudarshan chakra. When it rolls and falls into the Gandaki river, that constitutes the marriage of Shaligram and Tulsi Maharani. Those souls ascended back to Golok Dham, and their bodies became what is called Shaligram and Tulsi. If we would have thought of it, we would also remember, or we would conclude that this Leela teaches us a few things, and that is that Shankachura was so powerful And then he thought that because I'm so powerful, because I'm invincible, that I should fight with any and everybody. I can even take away the place of the devatas, and he did. And the mistake that Shankachud, in this Leela, the mistake that Shankachud made was he gave too much recognition to his physical prowess. And so he was overtaken by pride, by ego. And so now he thought that he can defeat the whole world, including the devatas. All the scriptures, including Hindu scripture, Sanatan Dharma, our scripture with an exception, however, say that, when you have power like that, when you have that kind of power, then a person becomes power drunk. Ramayana talks about that, but we'll talk about that another time. The Katha should have also reminded us that when a married woman lives a life in a certain way with her husband, then she gives support to that husband in so many different ways. The Katha taught us that Shankachud was only invincible because of two things. One, he got an amulet from Bhagavan, and two, because of the chastity of his wife Tulsi. And so when Bhagavan tricked him and took away the amulet, he was still very powerful. He was still invincible until the chastity of Tulsi had to be violated. And so it goes to show the power of women, what we can do, especially in a chaste woman and supporting her husband, expressing and exercising fidelity to her husband. There are so many different examples in the scriptures. There's an example of Gandhari, if you remember in Mahabharata, if you read or watched Mahabharata. Because Gandhari, the wife of Dhritarashtra, the mother of Duryodhana, was so powerful because of her fidelity to her husband, that if she had given to anyone that power, that person would become invincible. And so because of her emotions, when she knew that Duryodhana was wrong, but because this is her son, in the end of the Mahabharata war, emotionally she gave in to Duryodhana and said, come, I'll make you invincible so no one can defeat you anymore. Because all their other sons had died. Gandhari called Duryodhana and tried to infuse that power of Duryodhana with his pride. And, the way Bhagavan would have it, God's will, that part of Duryodhana's body that was covered did not receive that power from Gandhari. Duryodhana's body became unbreakable. Even the powerful Bhim, who had a strength of 10,000 elephants, could not defeat, with his mace in hand, could not defeat Duryodhana. As he hits Duryodhana, Duryodhana was sinking to the ground, but he would not be hurt. Until Bhim had to realize that there's a soft spot, there's a weak spot, that part that did not have the energy of the fidelity of his mother onto his body, and that's how he was defeated. There are many, this is another Katha, but there are many examples where a chaste woman, the power of a woman can make her husband invincible. And I'm not talking here now in the sense of physical prowess, brutal strength, but in terms of confidence, in terms of integrity, in terms of peace of mind. This is what a chaste woman would bring to her husband. In addition to so many other, making a husband proud of the children they have, because of the work that the wife would have put into the children. Even in modern day, the wife works full-time like the husband, but she has an extra role at home to make the home, to make it a peaceful home. Ramayana has given not a burden, but a responsibility upon the mother, that if the child is to become a child of God, a spiritual being, it is a mother's responsibility. So the mother has so many different responsibilities and can make this entire family become an exemplary one, in addition to working these days full-time. And so if the children are to become assets to society, if the husband is to become confident and full of peace of mind, all of that can be had by who the mother is to the family. So there are many, many examples of the power of women in Sanatan Dharma, but that is not our topic today. Today our topic is Damodar Katha. And so let us look into the pages of Bhagavad Mahapuran as we see what first happens. संजात कोप स्मृतारुणाधरं दधीमन्तभाजनं श्री संजात कोप स्मृतारुणाधरं सन्दस्य दधीमन्तभाजनं भृत्वा मृषासुर दृशदश्मनारहो भृत्वा मृषासुर दृशमनारहो जगासहयंग मन्वतरंगत ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So this is the 10th canto of Bhagavad Mahapuran. This is the 9th chapter, and we're starting with the 6th verse. We're trying to, condense the Katha. So, for those of you who have an idea how the Katha goes, you'll know that Sukadevji here is saying that one day, Mother Yashoda, Mother Yashoda is the foster mother of Sri Krishna. Krishna was about 2 years old, and Yashoda Maya, her husband Nanda Baba, had many, many cows. We said a couple of weeks ago that Nanda Baba had about 9 lakhs of cows. And so there's always a whole lot of milk in this house. And so Yashoda Maya was one day, she always has many people helping her. People come to play with Krishna. People come to spend time, have a little baby. The house is always full. Plus, Nanda Baba was the person in charge of that village, right? That's why it's called Nandagao. He was like the master, the king of that village. So many people would be there to help and to serve, and because of that and because of Krishna. But one day everybody else is busy, so Yashoda Maya saw that there's some work to do, so she sat herself and she was personally churning yogurt. Right? We take milk, we make yogurt. From yogurt, we make butter. From butter, we make ghee, etc. So she's sitting there and she's churning yogurt. While she's doing that, you're doing something kind of repetitive, then you start thinking other things, right? Something that takes physical power, not necessarily mental power, then your thoughts go all over the place. But in this case, Yashoda Maya, who had so much love for Sri Krishna, started thinking about Krishna while she's churning butter. So while she's thinking about him and all these little naughty things that Krishna does all the time, these memories are coming in her head, and she started composing little songs. What were the songs for? The songs were little pieces of poetry as to how Krishna behaves at home all the time, all the things he does. And so she was very much enjoying her own composition of her songs of the things that Krishna does. At that time, Yashoda Maya, like, many married women in India and other places do, she was wearing a saffron, according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, wearing a saffron, yellowish color sari, and she had her, the churiya, churiya? And the ladies would wear a lot of bangles, like this much probably, dressed properly. And so when you're making this action of churning, according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, that the churiya, these bangles were jingling. And so as Yashoda Maya is making these songs in her head and singing them, the bangles are making the music, and a whole full-blown music with a lot of rhythm is going on in Yashoda's head, supported by the jingling of the bangles, and she was having a great time, only thinking about Kanhaiya, her son, but Bhagavan. And so because of her intense love, this kind of message, her thought process, today I think we call it what? Telepathy. So Krishna being in the house, 2 years old, he's getting this message, hey, Maya is thinking about me and Maya is churning butter. So this is what Krishna likes the most. He doesn't like to hear about butter, the availability of butter. And so what he did, Krishna approached. All of a sudden, this little baby, because his mother is churning butter, he's hungry. So while Yashoda Maya is churning, Krishna approached. Because all of a sudden, like I said, he's very hungry. Yashoda Maya, of course, seeing Krishna, being very busy with her 2 hands, she grabbed him. Come, beta, come sit. Usually the little child sits on the lap of the mother. And so she's continuing to churn. And Kanhaiya, when the mother is thinking about the child and something else happens, she starts producing milk for the child to drink, a little child like that, still breastfeeding. And so Kanhaiya is having a good time. He's watching the yogurt over there. What Maya is doing, he's drinking milk over here, and he could not be happier. However, Yashoda Maya is hugging him, and he's having a good time. But in the other part of the house, there was a big, karai of milk boiling there. When that is done, then it has to be churned into yogurt. Yashoda Maya saw that the milk is now, as we say, it's running over. Right? It's boiling and running over. So she decided that, I'll have to go take care of that. And so she just puts Kanhaiya down. Without any notice, without, telling Kanhaiya anything, just ran over there and tried to take care of the boiling milk. The milk is boiling over. But Kanhaiya in his mind goes like, what kind of thing is this? I was so happy, I was having a great time, and all of a sudden Maya get up and left. Now I have no milk to drink. She's taking care of this, and I'm sitting here alone. Maya is too busy. So Kanhaiya, like a little baby, 2 years old, he got really upset. The slok we chanted in the beginning? It says, Puritarum nadaram. Spurita aruna adharam. Adharam? You remember adharam? Adharam madhuram vadanam madhuram. Adharam, the lips of Sri Krishna started trembling because he got so upset. It also said that Aruna, that his lips are very, very red. Adharam Madhuram explains that as well. But Bhagavad Mahapuran is saying that his lips are so red and now they got swollen. Why? Because Kanhaiya, when little baby gets upset, what he does? He starts biting his lip. Right? He gets upset. Babies do that, right? Isn't that true? So according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, this is what Kanhaiya was doing. Biting his lips because he's really upset because Maya left him. And he's not getting any milk. So he's biting his lips, he got really upset, and he decided to do something about it. And I'm not going to just sit here and have nothing going on. So Kanhaiya, being Makhan Chor, what did he do? In a little churning rod that Maya has, churning the butter, a little lathi, right? Remember we sang the little dhun? Choti choti lakuti, choti choti la. Kanhaiya took that little lathi and broke the pot. This is what he does all the time. He broke the pot with the yogurt in it. because he wants to eat yogurt. Maya left it, so Kanhaiya broke it, and he starts eating yogurt. He's having a good time, but he's thinking now, oh, I can't stay here and eat this yogurt because Maya will come back just now. And so he decided to take this yogurt pot with him and run away with it. So Kanhaiya picked up he ate some, made enough mess right there. Yogurt on the floor, yogurt on his lips. And he decided to leave. So Kanhaiya ran away. The other verse here, verse 8, says, Ulukalange rupari vyasatam vyavastitam markaya kamam daratam shichi stitam. You see, ulukal here, the word ulukal means what we know in Hindi, means Oakley. You know Oakley? Most people know Oakley, right? Mosul and Oakley, that mortar, that wooden mortar, that in Guyana we used to use it, you know, when wheat flour wasn't a thing, we used to use it to pound rice, chawal, into flour. People use it for all kinds of things. So Kanhaiya decided that he'll run away, and he went outside, and there was an Oakley there. Kanhaiya now is sitting in this Oakley with all this butter, and he's eating. Not only is he eating, Vyavastitam, he's sitting there very comfortably. Markaya kamam daratam. Daratam here means to give, right? Marka is markat. You know, markat is what? Monkeys. You know, in India, there's always lots of monkeys. So the pot is so big, Kanhaiya has so much makhan, so much yogurt, so much to eat, that the monkeys came by. Yashoda Maya is working so hard to make the butter. Kanhaiya is now sitting outside, taking it and giving it to the monkeys. He's eating some, giving the monkeys some. A whole bunch of monkeys surrounded him. If you ever went to India and you go to certain places, you know, the market in Vrindavan, if you go to Govardhan, so many places, Nandagaon especially, there's still many, many monkeys. You go there, there's lots of monkeys, and they always want something to eat. You give them a banana, you'll be surprised how they peel it like a human being. And they're eating it and watching you. When they finish, they want another one. So this is what Kanhaiya was doing. Feeding the monkeys while he's eating. Yashoda Maya came. There's no Kanhaiya. So she's thinking, Are? She looked at a mess. It looked like a storm passed there where she was sitting. Why? Because Kanhaiya broke all the pot. He did, you know, he broke everything and he went away and feeding the monkeys outside. How did she find him? Kanhaiya didn't realize when he broke the pot and he made such a big mess, as he ran away, there are footprints of Makhan, exactly where Kanhaiya went. So Yashoda Maya now is looking for him, tracing the footsteps of the Makhan and looking for Kanhaiya. Kanhaiya saw Maya coming. He goes like, oh boy, now I'm in trouble. So what happened? Let's see from Bhagavad Mahapurana. Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Bhajamanam Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Bhajamanam Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Yashoda Biyolu Kale लोलु खले धावमानं परामृष्टमत्यन्ततो दूतगोप्या परामृष्टमत्यन्ततो दूतगोप्या ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So Katha is sitting on the mortar, feeding the monkeys, eating, and he felt something. What did he feel? Yashoda Maya is approaching him. He looked behind, Maya is coming. So what do you think Kanhaiya did? Little 2-year-old baby, made some mischief, mommy is coming. What's the first thing a baby does? He made a dash for it. He started running. Running away from the mortar, from the grinding, the grinding mortar, because he's scared of Maya. He knows he's in trouble. He knows what he has done. This verse here actually is from Padma Puran. This is a conversation from, Satyavrat. Maharaj is telling Narad Muni that Kanhaiya started running, and if you're 2 years old, your feet are very short, right? And then there's an adult person. When a child makes 4 or 5 steps, an adult person makes 1 step. So Maya is gaining ground in Kanhaiya. And Kanhaiya is running like really quick, right? As Maya is approaching, he's going this way and that way and this way and that way, and he's looking back, and Maya is just running behind him. And eventually, Maya caught up with Kanhaiya and grabbed him. Kanhaiya now is in a lot of trouble. And so he's thinking, what can I do here? What would Maya do? What kind of excuse can I use here to get out of this trouble? Maya had her own plans. So according to Bhagavad Mahapuran again, in the 15th verse, this is what Maya did. This is what Yashoda Maya, this is what her plan was for Kanhaiya. Akshutam Keshavam Krishna Damodaram Akshutam Keshavam Krishna Damodaram Akshutam Keshavam Krishna Damodaram Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham Akshutam Keshavam Krishna Damodaram Akshutam Keshavam Krishna Damodaram Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham. कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं, कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं, तुम मीरा के जैसे बुलाते नहीं, तुम मीरा को जैसे बुलाते नहीं. अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरं रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्. तरदाम बध्यमानस्य सौर्भः कस्य कृतागस दव्यङ्गुले नवमूतेन सन्दते अन्यस्य गोपिका. अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरम् अच्युतं केशवं कृष्णदामोदरं Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallabham. So Maya decides, in order for her to clean up all this mess that Kanhaiya has made, and in order to finish her work that she started, that she needs to get Kanhaiya to be calm. Now, see, today when the mothers want, not that I mean it in a bad way, but when the parents are there and they're busy, what do? You give the child a toy, right? Depending on the age of the child, give him a toy, something goes pook, pook, pooch, pooch, keeps the child is busy. Oh, where's the sound coming from? The lights are coming, child is occupied. Child is a little bit older, you tell them go watch TV. You have some educational show, you put the child, they start watching TV. The mother gets to do her work. But back then there was no little toy making these noises, and there was no TV, there was no internet, there was no, all these fancy things that children play with. So Maya is thinking, what can I do with Kanhaiya? And she got an idea. Taradam vadyamanasya, dam means rope, right? This dam means rope. Maya got an idea, this Oakley that I have here, I should just take a piece of rope and tie Kanhaiya onto it. If I do that, he wouldn't be able to move. This Oakley is way too big for him. He's a little baby, 2 years old. So I'll tie him here for a little bit. He can have fun, eat, how much yogurt he wants, and sit and have a good time. And when I'm finished, I'm going to come back. He can play with the monkeys and all these things, right? Maybe the monkey can represent the little toy. So Maya says, okay, she takes a piece of rope and she decides to tie Kanhaiya. Remember? She takes the first piece of rope and she's now tying Kanhaiya to the Oakley. When she's trying to tie him, when she's trying to bind him to the rope, Maya realized something. She realized, the verse tells us, Davyanguli means Dvi Anguli. Dvi means two. Anguli means what we know as, Anguti, right? Finger. So Yashoda Maya realized that the rope that she has is short by the breadth of two fingers. The breadth of two fingers. Meaning a little bit short only. Just not too much. Just a little bit short. The length of two fingers. So she goes like, okay, you wait right here. I'm going to go get some more rope. Maya went, she got some more rope. She came back. She tries to tie Kanhaiya, and the rope is short by the breadth of two fingers. Again. She brought another piece of rope. Now the gopis and gwals, they were watching, and they're having a good time. They realize Maya cannot, tie Kanhaiya here. And so she started telling them, go, bring more rope. This is a house of a cowherd, right? So there are lots and lots of ropes. So Maya brought all these ropes, and every time she went to tie Kanhaiya, according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, Anguti, the breadth of two fingers of rope is always short. She's not able. The new rope that she brought is still short by the measurement of two fingers. And another rope, and another rope. Still two fingers. Whatever she brought, same problem. In the meantime, as the gopis are watching this, this is a spectacle, Maya is wonderstruck. She doesn't understand what's going on. She knows that something is going on. She's smiling. The friends are watching and they're smiling. In the meantime, some of the gopis already went and they told Radharani what's going on. Radharani says, okay. Radharani knows what is in Kanhaiya's mind and what can get him tied. So Radharani, she gave what is called, you remember this song? We used to hear it a lot a long time ago. Resham Ki Doli. You remember that song? Resham Ki Doli used to be played at all the wedding house. Resham Ki Doli means like a silk string, right? So Radha Rani, she just took a silk string from her own clothing, she gave it to the gopis, said, tell Maya to use this and everything will be fine. Maya received a silk string from Radha Rani and she was able to bind Kanhaiya to the Oakley. No problem. Kanhaiya was not, he was now, he was tied there. Maya is very busy with her household chores because she took care of Kanhaiya. But all of a sudden, as Krishna is bound to the Oakley and he's watching around in the yard, he observed that there are two huge trees over there. He can see these trees. Almost looks like two trees very close to each other, very similar, identical looking. And he goes like, that's interesting. Let me go see what's happening there. In the meantime, Maya thought that he cannot move. Kanhaiya just pulled the Oakley and everything and he went over there by the trees. Effortlessly. So he's watching the trees and he realized that these trees are called the Yamal Arjun trees. Yamal Arjun, Yamal means twin, right? So these are twin Arjun trees. And he took an interest in these trees. Why did he take an interest? Because these were not just trees. See, King Parikshit here is now asking Sukadev, who's narrating the Bhagavad Mahapuran, Sukadeva Goswami, that why did little Krishna take such an interest in these trees? So he's explaining, he says, oh great saint, these two trees are not just ordinary trees, but according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, that these trees are called Nalakuvara and Manigriv. They actually have names. Normally they're known as the Yamal Arjun trees. So they have names. Where did these names come from? So Sukadev ji is now explaining to Parikshit that the way these names came about is something that actually happened with Narad Muni. It's a katha that has to do with Narad Muni. And Narad Muni had said that these two trees will be here. So Parikshit wanted to know more, and so Sukadeva Goswami is now explaining to Parikshit how these trees got here, why do they have names, where they came from, and what is the purpose for them here. Why does Kanhaiya have such a great interest in these trees? Bhagavad Mahapuran tells us how they got there. Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana. Puranarshapena Vrikshatam Prapitau Madat Nalakuvara Manigriva Iti Kyatha Sriyanvitau Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Jana Jivana, Radha Ramana, Gopi Radha Ramana, Gopi Jan Jivana, Radha Ramana. 23rd verse of the same chapter. Now, Sukadev ji is explaining to Parikshit that, look, you heard the names in the slok, Nalakuvara, Manigriva, that these were two human beings before. Yamal Arjun, and that's why they're twins. Because in their former lives, they were known as Dandat Majau. Dandat Majau is given in the 22nd verse of this Katha, basically meaning that they were the sons of Kuber. You know, Lord Kuber, the Devata Kuber. Kuber is the Devata, the celestial being who is administering over the responsibilities of wealth in the world. Kuber. So he's like the, what do you call it, the treasury. The treasury secretary. Yeah, that's what it is. Minister of Finance, right? So this is Kuber. Nalakuvara and Manigriv were the sons of Kuber. Now obviously, Kuber would be very, very wealthy. He's in charge of all the wealth in the universe. Bhagavan tells him, this is your role. You take care of the wealth in the universe. So these were, in their former birth, of course, these were the two sons of Kuber. And they were known as Nalakuvara and Manigriv. And of course, they were extremely, extremely rich. Very opulent, very fortunate. You know, when they say people are born with a gold spoon or something like that, meaning you're born in wealth. The privileged. Sometimes what we also hear is that, you know, children that are born in wealth are sometimes slated as the children who are most vulnerable when it comes to being spoiled children. Now, that is not necessarily the case. That doesn't have to be the case, but this is something that is always said. This is why even wealthy people, you know, some of the wealthiest people in this country, I think, I don't know, I think Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, they all, as their children are growing up, what they did, when they finish school, they send them to work. Even though they don't need the salary, they send them out to know what it is out there. Because it is very easy for you to keep pampering a child from the time he is born and he gets everything, doesn't know how anything comes. Those children are most likely to not be cognizant of the struggles people have to get things, and they can be spoiled, clearly. Remember, this is not a rule. This doesn't have to be the case, but it is. Many times it is the case. But rich parents who are responsible parents, this is never the case. Remember we talked in the beginning, the mother's role in the lives of the children. If the mother knows what her responsibility and executes her responsibility, it doesn't matter if the child is rich or poor. That will be a responsible child. So with the parents who are responsible, it doesn't matter if the child is born in wealth, that child would be a good child. There are many, many children. Here in this Katha is a different case. That these were the children of Kuber, and they were spoiled. They did many, many wrong things. Because they had everything. They developed so much pride, so much false prestige. So Narad Muni concluded when he got to know of their behavior that if these children are behaving in such a way, and I'll tell you in brief what their behavior was, that they're not being any different from trees. They behaved in a certain way that Naradji, who can see the future, concluded that with their behavior, you remember Purva Janma Kritam Karma, that your future is what your actions of the past, unmodified by your future action, your present actions, that's what your future will be. So, Naradji is saying, these children can become trees with the behavior that they have. So Sukadevji is saying to King Parikshit that because these two sons of Kuber had been so elevated in their birth, because they're the sons of Kuber, that they had the association or even Bhagavan Shankar. And because of that, they became very proud. That because they were so elevated, they were able to dwell in the garden attached to Kailash Parvat. You know Kailash Parvat, where Bhagavan Shankar resides. Parvat means mountain. Kailashpati, that's what Shankar Bhagavan is called. On the banks of this Kailash Parvat, there's a very auspicious and very, popular river that's known by Mandakini. We heard that name, right? The Mandakini. You know, Mandakini, Salila Chandana Charachitam, that Bhagavan Shankar. The Mandakini river is still there. If you go to people who went to India to visit different places, would have gone to the Mandakini. So because they had the authority to dwell on the banks of the Mandakini in the garden of Bhagavan Shankar himself, which is a very sacred place, they will wander about the garden, they will ransack the garden, they will do all kinds of wrong things in this garden. In the Mandakini, next to that garden was very flourishing with kamal flowers, lotus flower in the Mandakini, very, very sacred space. And the sons of Kuber would always be intoxicated. And they're always completely, almost entirely undressed. Because they're always intoxicated. Because they have such a high level, they had absolutely no regard for the place that they were operating in and the people who came in their contact. They were only focused on what they wanted to do, which is always breach all the laws of Dharma and humanity, social rules, etc. They were even doing things adharmic in the Mandakini itself. Amongst all these, being intoxicated and going in the Mandakini river, etc. Day after day, they will desecrate the sanctity of this, this lotus-laden sacred river in a sacred space that is attached to the Kailash Parvat in a garden. And so they were destined for suffering because why? Every action has an opposite or an equivalent reaction. If you do good, you'll get good. If you do bad, you'll get bad. So Naradji shows up there one day by the Mandakini. And even though Naradji is a saint, a great saint called Devrishi Narad, Nalakuvar and Manigriv did not do anything different. They recognized Naradji, they know who Naradji is. When Naradji showed up there, all their friends ran away because they know Naradji is a saint, the person who is deserving of tremendous reverence. Nalakuvar and his brother, because they were so rich and because they didn't have any training growing up, because they're so powerful, they said, we don't have any time with him. We can disrespect him, we'll do the same thing. So they stayed there without, barely dressed. And it is because of that, if you go to a place, a beautiful place, and there are trees there. The trees, if a saint walks to a place where there is a tree, the tree doesn't just decide to, there's a saint coming, let me put on some clothes. A tree doesn't do that, right? Because it can't. If a saint goes there or an evil person goes there, a tree doesn't behave any differently. It can't move. It can't put on any clothes. It can't do anything different because it's a tree. A tree doesn't have any clothes on. So Naradji looked at this and he says, with that behavior, the only thing that can come out of that in their next birth will be they'll be born as trees. Now this might sound tough, it might sound difficult, it might sound harsh, but it's not. Every action has an equivalent. This is cause and effect. This is essentially the law of karma. As long as there's a cause, there will be an effect. That's a scientific law. So all the friends ran away, but the two sons of Kuber, they stayed there and decided to completely disrespect Naraji, not caring anything about who he was, remained improperly dressed, etc., behaving, in a grossly inappropriate way in the presence of a saint. So seeing them, this was Naraji's conclusion. And now he's saying further, Parikshit Parikshit is listening to Sukadev Goswami. That what happens when people behave in this way? Why do they behave like that? And what is it can change? So this is the last verse that we'll quote in our Katha today, with a slightly different spin as to the explanation that Naraji is giving according to Bhagavad Mahapuran. So here's what the words of this verse says. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. Jai Gopala, Jai Gopala, Krishna Kandhaiya, Jai Gopala, Jai Gopala, Jai Gopala, Krishna Kandhaiya, Jai Gopala, Bala Mukunda, Jai Nandalala, Krishna Kandhaiya, Jai Gopala, Bala Mukunda, Jai Nandalala, Krishna Kandhaiya, Jai Gopala, Nahanyo Jushato Josha Buddhir Ransho Rajo Guna Srimadadami Jatyadir Yat Sri Dhutamasava Bala Mukunda Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala Jai Nandalala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala Krishna Kandhaiya Jai Gopala. So Naraji now is saying, according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, that he gives 4 examples. He says that amongst all the attractions of material enjoyments in life, there are a few that are listed here, that there are 4 sets of main attractions of life. One is the attraction of riches. Secondly, the attraction of having a beautiful body. Bodily features. Third, taking birth in like an aristocratic family. And 4, being learned. So these are 4 things, 4 of the enjoyments of life. Naraji is saying here, amongst these 4, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence more than any of the other 3. These are the words of Naraji. These are not my words, right? That when one is bereft of knowledge, then amongst these 4 enjoyments that you can have, that the enjoyment of riches will spoil you and destroy you the quickest, or the one that is most likely to destroy the human being. So what does it say here? It says, these type of people will become puffed up by their wealth, and this will result in one engaging, together with his wealth, in what is called dyutam, according to the, you see, it says Stri Dyuta Masava. So dyutam here means gambling. Asava means the consumption of wine, meaning alcohol. And Stri, in the case of a male person, a guy, Stri means women. That without having spiritual intelligence, without investing in knowledge from the scriptures that will translate into proper behavior, then the wealth of a human being would be used to be engrossed and involved in gambling, in the consumption of alcohol, and in a man's case, in running after women. This is according to Bhagavad Mahapuran, 10th canto, 10th chapter, 8th verse. That one needs to invest in spiritual intelligence. You can have all those goodies, all those niceties, all those opulences, and not be harmed in any way if you have spiritual intelligence. So what is this spiritual intelligence? Let's talk 2 minutes about it and then we'll close. Are we off? Excuse me, I don't know, we're having some technical difficulties. I'm not sure if we're on or where we're on, but I'm going to continue. So if you're hearing, then that's the idea. Okay. All right, so I think we're on. So we'll bring our Katha to a close here by quoting a reference first. So here, Naraji is saying that a person without spiritual intelligence will fall prey to these material enjoyments, and the one that's going to attract him the most is material wealth. And the way to combat that, to have all of those and not lose track of reality, is to have spiritual intelligence. Now, spiritual intelligence here doesn't necessarily mean, secular education. There's no problem with that. It's a blessing to be educated. But the spiritual intelligence is of a different kind. See, at the beginning of the 20th century, we used to hear, well, not we weren't here, but for those of you who were here, in the beginning of the 20th century, psychologists, and so they measured intelligence by what we call today IQ, intelligence quotient. But then of late, in the last maybe decade of the 90s, in the 1990s, the last decade of the 20th century, then we started hearing of something called emotional intelligence, EQ. And since the turn of the century, in the 21st century now, there is collective evidence from, different fields in psychology, evidence in neurology, evidence in cognitive science, to show us that there's a third Q, which is called SQ, meaning spiritual quotient, spiritual intelligence. Today, authors claim that it's the most fundamental intelligence, spiritual intelligence. There's so many beautiful, books out on spiritual intelligence. Cindy Wigglesworth says that the ability to behave with wisdom and compassion while maintaining inner peace, regardless of the situation, is what spiritual intelligence is. That becoming fully human is not an attainment but a continuous engagement. And the ability to live fully in that engagement is perhaps the most significant of attainments we can aspire to. That what is spiritual intelligence? Spiritual intelligence is a question will be who is driving your life. Is it the calmer, wiser, higher self in charge? Or are you driven by an immature, short-sighted ego, or the ideals, or even other people? Are we driven by our higher self, or are we driven by the immature ego, by short-sightedness, or even are we driven by the opinions, the ideals of others? So these are questions, observances that we can make when it comes to spiritual intelligence. I want to quote you a study before we close on spiritual intelligence. In 1997, Dana Zohar, a graduate of MIT and Harvard who preaches on physics and philosophy, she looked at spiritual intelligence and spiritual capital, and she gave 12 reasons. She defined it by 12 principles to live by, a person of spiritual intelligence. Now, those are available. You can go find them. And so this work that Dana Zohar did, there was a scientific research done on this work in this year, 2020, by a person called Katarzyna Szyzazinski. It's a difficult name. But this is not just a study. This study is also published in the Journal of Religion and Health. So you can go look up this study. The Journal of Religion and Health 2020. Right? So the study found from numerous accounts of persons experiencing what they feel and saying that this is what spiritual intelligence is. And people of spiritual intelligence, the things that are happening to them, they're encountering things like the capacity to transcend the physical and the material. They're experiencing the ability to, or the ability to experience heightened states of consciousness, a person of spiritual intelligence. The ability to sanctify everyday experience. Sanctify the experiences you have during the day. The ability to utilize spiritual resources to solve everyday problems. The capacity to be virtuous. These are all experiences of a person who has spiritual intelligence. And this is according to a scientific research. So the researcher concluded that based on the numerous findings that spiritual intelligence may indeed exist based on science. And that although, it is something that science has not yet established like formally, that scientists should build upon this research and they should establish what is called a self-report questionnaire. Self-report questionnaire worldwide to gather more information and establish spiritual intelligence as a formal science, building upon Howard Gardner. We know Howard Gardner, the professor from Harvard, building upon Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. So Naraji is saying that a person with spiritual intelligence will have all these opulences in life and never go astray. But we have to dip deep into our being and we'll find spiritual intelligence there. So what happened in the conclusion of the Katha, that although these two young men are sons of the very rich Kuber, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is saying as he approached these two trees, he realized what the story is with them, and he's saying they're not devotees of mine, they're the sons of Kuber, and they've abused their power. But even though they're not devotees of mine, because of devotee of mine, Devarishi Narad had promised them. You see, when Naraji realized that they would become trees early in the Katha, he felt sorry. And he said that they will become trees, but when Krishna shows up, he will liberate them. In that way, they're not trees forever, but they will be able to go back to their original abode of their father, Kuber. And so Krishna, saying that this is a promise that was made to them by Narad Muni, a devotee of mine, and so because of that, he wanted to deliver them from this difficult situation. And so, Bhagavanji decided, Sri Krishna decided to, he says, Rircha bhoga vata mukhyasya satyam kartu vacho hari satyam kartu vachaha. This is what Bhagavan does for his devotees. He makes their word become truthful. Hari means supreme. Bhagavan Sri Krishna is ensuring that the words of his devotees don't fail. And so he decided to take action. What did he do? Bhagavan Sri Krishna, although these weren't his devotees, like I said, he decided to help them and he moved forward. Remember this oak tree is tied to him. That's how he's Damodar, right? Dam means a rope, like we said before. Udar means like this belly area, this is Udar. So these two words together, Dam, Udar, when you do the Sandhi, becomes Damodar. This is how Sri Krishna has this name. 2 years old, he got this name Damodar, because a rope was tied to his waist and tied to the oak tree. So he's Damodar Bhagavan. So here Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he moved towards, where these two trees were sitting. He entered between these two Arjuna trees, and this big mortar tied to his back. It was so huge that as long as Kanhaiya passed through, the two trees, the mortar was bigger, and so it got stuck by the two trees. Krishna, this is his way of delivering these two boys. And so with some force, he pulled these trees down. When he pulled them down, what happened? 2 human beings appeared there. In their original form, these were Nalakuvar and Manigriv. They saw Sri Krishna, they bowed, they made great promises to Sri Krishna. There's beautiful verses here. Their bodies were shining because they were, the sons of Devatas. They bowed their heads, they offered their prayers to Sri Krishna. They made lots of promises, had a conversation with Sri Krishna. These verses are Bani guna kathane shravanau kathayam hastau cha karmasu manastau padayorne. Long verses, but essentially what they're saying, that may our ears engage in your glories, O Lord. May our hands and legs and other senses engage in your actions, actions that are pleasing to you. May our minds even think of your lotus feet always. May our heads always bow to you in obeisance. Not only to you, but to everything and everyone in this world, because they realize what they remember their last birth now, and they realize how they disrespected everything. And so now they're promising Krishna to have regard for everything in God's creation. And may our eyes always see the saints. They remembered how they disrespected Naraji, and he was still merciful to them. May our eyes always see the saints as none different from you. So Manigriv and Nalakuvara, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says now that you can return to your home. And since you now desire to become absorbed in devotional service, since this is your desire, as a result of that, you will never fall from the platform that you will be holding now, which is living in the happy heavenly regions and being the sons of Kuber. So this is the Katha in short of Damodar, to deliver these two individuals who became trees because they acted in a tree-like manner and become trees. We know there's Chaurasi Lakh Yoni. We know that our future is based on our past actions. In the same way that people say, show me your company, I'll tell you who you are. In a karmic way, show me your actions and I'll tell you what your future is. So based on their actions, they became trees. But because of the mercy of Narad-ji, that Bhagavan will come in their contact and they'll be able to get their bodies again. So essentially, to wrap up here, when Yashoda Maya tried to tie Krishna, we have to remember she tried to tie him with a rope. And it was always falling short. The rope was always failing, even though there was so much rope in the house. She used everything that was available. In a similar manner, in life, things may go wrong sometimes. We may come up short when we do things. We may have all the confidence and every piece of tool and equipment, and we'll find that we still came up short. We cannot understand the reason. Just like the rope was coming up short. Then we should always have confidence and keep trying. Failing doesn't mean you quit. Failing means that you're closer to becoming successful every time you fail. And with perseverance, we should continue and have implicit trust in Bhagavan. As long as you're doing something that is not harmful to others, even those people sometimes get through, but if this is something that you want to do, have trust in Bhagavan, continue persevering. If you do, just like Yashoda Maya was able to tie Kandhaya eventually, because she continued. And with God's grace, Radharani sent the silken cloth and she was able to be successful, Yashoda Maya. In the same way, we'll become successful too, as long as we have trust in Bhagavan and we work hard. Let's continue to do our duty, keep fighting on, keep working hard. And in our mind, let's surrender to Bhagavan that I'm doing the work. You will decide whether I'll be successful or not, as long as I exhaust every option, every avenue, as long as I do my best and place your trust in Bhagavan, then you too, we too can be successful. Because there's always fruits to the actions you perform. Bad actions, bad fruits. Good actions, good fruits. No action, mental action. Because the physical action starts from a mental action. No action goes unpaid. So let us always, be persistent in the good things we want to do in life. And if we do, there will be divine intervention. We must all realize that there's a time and a place for everything. And not behave like Nalakuvara and Manigrave. That don't violate the sanctity of anyone or anything because you think you can, like they did. Because there's reactions to actions. There's a cause and there's an effect. So there's always an effect to a cause. Don't abuse situations because you can. Don't speak just because you have voice. Don't act just because you have strength. Think first. Recognize and appreciate the human body and the purpose for which it was given to us. The core purpose. Always be aware of the divinity that we have. Every person has a percentage of divinity within, and if we tap into that divinity, we'll be able to come up with solutions to every problem. There's a divine side to all of us. And when we act with that side, with spiritual intelligence, we'll act appropriately in life. Because there's always, unfailingly, like I said, a reaction to every action. So if you do that which is positive, the reaction will be positive. That is our little katha for today, my dear friends. I hope and pray that this will help in some way to make us think more in life, and also to remember this katha. These kathas, these leelas are done for us to remember God. That is a primary reason for these leelas. So let's remember them. Let's remember this leela and do meditation. That's the whole idea. To do meditation, remembering these leelas. So we will not practice this meditation today because it's getting late, but what I want us to do is that when we have some more time later in the day, we sit in a corner by ourselves, remember this Leela, play a little bit of music, something that can drown out the noise that's around, or if you go in a quiet room, think about this Leela, and automatically you'll see the 10-15 minutes will go by. You would have been thinking about Bhagavan, and that is the highest form of meditation. We'll bring our Katha to an end here with a small bhajan that most of us, if not everyone, knows. It's about Makhan Chor Leela. So let's group our voices together. Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki Jai. Maya Mori मैं नहीं माखन खायो मैया मोरी ओ मैं नहीं माखन खायो मैया मोरी कहत सुनत में आकर काहे कहत सुनत में आकर काहे झूठा दोष लगायो रे मैया मोरी मैं नहीं माखन खायो रे मैया मोरी मैं नहीं माखन खायो मैया मोरी ओ मैं नहीं माखन खायो मैया मोरी यमुना के तट पर ग्वाल बाल संग चार पहर मैं खेला यमुना के तट पर ग्वाल बाल संग चार पहर में खेला गैया चरावत बंसी बजावत भई सांझ के बेला भूख लगी तो दौड़त दौड़त भूख लगी तो दौड़त दौड़त सीधा मैं घर आयो रे मैया मोरी मैं नहीं माखन खायो रे मैया मोरी मैं नहीं माखन खायो मैया मोरी ओ मैं नहीं माखन खायो मैं तो बाबा नंद के लाला काहे चार कहाओ मैं तो बाबा नंद के लाला काहे चोर कहाओ अपने घर में कौन कमी जो बाहर माखन खायो अपने घर में कौन कमी जो बाहर माखन खायो। बात सुनी तो माता यशोदा, बात सुनी तो माता यशोदा, हंस कर कंठ लगायो, फिर बोली तू नहीं माखन खायो। हे कृष्णा मोरे तू नहीं माखन खायो। मैया मोरी ओ मैं नहीं माखन खायो। मैया मोरी ओ मैं नहीं माखन खायो। मैं नहीं माखन खायो। मैं नहीं माखन खायो। वृंदावन बिहारी लाल की